Good evening, I'm Laura Jones, host of New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. And in just a few minutes, we will begin the first debate between the candidates for the Democratic nomination for New Jersey's 8th Congressional District, the incumbent Congressman Rob Menendez and Ravi Bhalla, the mayor of Hoboken. There is a third candidate, Kyle J.C., but he was not invited to participate this evening. The winner of June's primary election will go on to compete in November's general election for the seat currently held by Congressman Rob Menendez. This 60-minute debate is presented by On New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Our panelists are David Wildstein and Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe, and Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. So, here's what you can expect in the next hour. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to make an opening statement. After that, our panel will ask a series of questions related to national and state issues. Now, we realize that for any number of the topics covered tonight, we could easily dedicate an entire debate to. But in the interest of covering as many topics as possible, we're going to keep the conversation moving along with our timeline. Respectfully, I ask both candidates to stick to their allotted time. If a candidate goes too long, I'm going to hold up my hand. If that doesn't work, I'm going to interrupt. If that doesn't work, I do have a bell that I will ring if they go over their time. Hopefully that won't happen. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer and 1 minute to respond. If a candidate is attacked during the response, his or her opponent will receive an additional 30 seconds to respond. Now, I reserve the option for a follow-up question before moving on. My job is to be the moderator. It's not to take sides and not to give my opinion, so I'm going to moderate and keep this debate on course. I'm going to look to each candidate to make sure what their opponent says is based on fact. Each candidate will also have a chance to ask their opponent one question, so the candidates are going to have 30 seconds to ask the question. Their opponent gets a minute to answer, and the other gets 30 seconds to respond. The candidates then have 90 seconds for a closing statement. So those are the rules. New Jersey Debate Night is getting started. Stay with us. First, here's a look at the candidates' launch videos.
Rob Menendez does what he says, always fighting for what matters to us, taking on the toughest fights on the biggest issues, unafraid to go after the MAGA extremists, and getting things done. That's how he's built a reputation as a straight-talking leader. Rob does what he says, and he does it for us. That's who Rob Menendez is.
I'm Rob Menendez, and you're who I'm fighting for. That's why I approve this message.
My parents came here as immigrants from India in search of a better life. As a civil rights attorney, I fought discrimination to make lives better. My first act as mayor of Hoboken was taking on Trump when he attacked immigrants. I took action to address flooding and led our economic recovery. I'm Ravi Bhalla, a Democrat running for Congress to get things done. And I approve this message because it's time to get to work.
and welcome to New Jersey Debate Night. I'm Laura Jones, and this is the first debate between the Democratic candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives from New Jersey's 8th Congressional District, between the incumbent Congressman Rob Menendez and Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bhalla. The debate is presented by the New Jersey Globe, On New Jersey, and Rider University. Our panelists this evening are David Wildstein, editor of the New Jersey Globe, Micah Rasmussen, director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University, and Joey Fox, congressional correspondent for the New Jersey Globe. We conducted a virtual coin toss before the start of the debate. The winner of that coin toss is Ravi Bhalla, so he will have the first statement. Mayor, welcome. Over to you.
Can't hear anything.
Mayor, can you hear us? Okay, we're going to work on that audio issue, and we will let the opening statement now go to Congressman Rob Menendez. Congressman, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. The floor is yours. You have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Well, thank you. Good evening. My name is Rob Menendez, and I have the distinct honor of representing New Jersey's 8th Congressional District. 2 years ago, I raised my hand to represent this incredible place and to go down to Washington, fight for you and your family every single day. And that's exactly what I've done. In Washington, I'm standing up to MAGA extremists. I'm fighting for a woman's right to choose. I'm fighting for access to contraception no matter where in this country you live. I'm fighting to end the scourge of gun violence that has existed in our communities and our schools for far too long. I'm standing up for our immigrant community. Over 40% of the people that live here were born outside this country, and I stand tall for them every single day. And when Republicans came for our trans youth, I stood up against it, and I stood up with them for our brothers and our sisters. Here, we've solved over 1,500 cases for our residents, most of which are immigration related. We've kept families together. We've reunited families from as far away as Afghanistan. We brought back $11 billion in infrastructure funding for the Gateway program for the Northeast Corridor. We brought back money for environmental justice grants and making sure we have healthier, greener communities for all of our residents. But my opponent's not going to talk about any of that this evening. He's going to want to talk about one person only, and that's my father. And I'm sure we will address that this evening. But I'm here to tell you who I am and what I'm about. I'm about results over rhetoric, solutions over sound bites, putting people over politics, and making sure that we deliver for our families every single day. That's who I am. That's what I'm about. And I'm fighting for you.
Congressman, thank you very much. Now we're going to go back over to the mayor. Mayor, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Mayor, over to you for your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Ravi Bhalla. I am the mayor of the city of Hoboken, and it is my honor to join you here tonight as a candidate for U.S. Congress for the 8th Congressional District of New Jersey. I was born and raised right here in New Jersey, the son of immigrants from humble roots. When my mom and dad first came to the United States, they lived in a trailer park in the middle of Pennsylvania. My brother and I grew up in a modest apartment complex in West Paterson, New Jersey. And we didn't have much, but we loved America and all it had to offer. My father, a scientist and inventor, started a small business right here in New Jersey. And I'm proud to say that he is the living embodiment of the American dream. I've worked hard as a civil rights attorney, fighting against discrimination and giving a voice to people who have often been left voiceless. As a city council member, then a two-term mayor of Hoboken, I know what it takes to get things done, to make working lives people better. From investing in public safety to making sure kids have a safe environment, to innovating to tackle flooding and climate change, I am proud of what we've accomplished together. As a member of the United States Congress, I will continue my lifelong work to fight against hate and discrimination while delivering results for New Jersey working families. Whether that means standing up to Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans to protect abortion rights or building coalitions to fight climate change and lower costs, you will know where I stand because it's the same place that I've always stood before, doing this work, delivering results, fighting for New Jersey families, and I would be honored to have your vote.
Okay, thank you very much for your opening statements. We're going to get to our panel right away. David Wildstein, you have the first question that goes to Congressman Menendez.
Thank you. Congressman, let's start with the elephant in the room, the indictment of your father, Senator Bob Menendez. I know that it's been a difficult year for you. I'm certain that you love your father very much, but you've read and heard the same allegations that your constituents have. You've said you believe in the presumption of innocence, but with Democrats holding a precarious majority in the Senate and your father about to miss 2 months of votes while he's on trial, is it in the best interest of your district and your constituents that he resign right now?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. And as you mentioned, it's been a challenging couple of months. It's challenging when you have someone who's going through a difficult set of circumstances. But as you mentioned, there's the presumption of innocence. People have the right to mount a full defense for anything that they've been charged of. And that's something I think we all believe in and agree upon. And he continues to do the work in the Senate. And, the decisions that he has to make, he will make. But we're here and we're focused on our race. We're here and we're focused on doing the work of the residents of the 8th Congressional District. We've been so focused on this from the time we took office. We are obsessive about serving our residents, serving our constituents. And I think when you look at our track record, you'll see that we've delivered every single day. As I mentioned, we've solved over 1,500 cases for the families who live here in the district. That's the work I'm really proud of. That's what I want to focus on. And that's what I want to talk about this evening.
Okay, Mr. Bhalla, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. As you said, David, it is the elephant in the room. And the congressman is not to blame for what his father is alleged to have done. But I am very concerned as a resident of the 8th District that the congressman himself is not concerned about the fact that his father is being accused of being a foreign agent for the government of Egypt. I think it also concerns me that he doesn't seem to be bothered by the fact that his father and Donald Trump might have access to classified information while under the cloud of these accusations. I think it's concerning that the congressman has not even endorsed Andy Kim for U.S. Senate because his father might run as an independent when the Senate is at balance, the control of the Senate is at balance, and reproductive rights and important issues are at balance. And finally, it's concerning that he voted not to expel George Santos because it would have set a bad precedent for his father. Those things make him fundamentally compromised to serve in the U.S. Congress, in my respectful opinion.
Mr. Menendez, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to respond to, including inaccuracies. I did vote to expel George Santos. The first time the committee had not finished their investigation, but once they had, I voted to expel him. So you can quickly dismiss of that, as you will be able to dismiss of many of the things that Ravi says this evening. But listen, the overwhelming majority of individuals who I encounter understand this is a unique, a very unique dynamic. It's a challenging dynamic. And I'm just thankful that people have shown me the grace, including my colleagues who are all supporting my reelection, folks in the community who are supporting our reelection, the labor unions who are supporting our re-election. So if you look at the entire universe of people who are part of the district, they support me, they trust me, and they know that I will continue to deliver for them as I have every single day since I've taken office.
Okay, back to our panel. Micah Rasmussen, you have the next question, and that goes to Mayor Bhalla.
Mayor, as you know, the control over the House and the control of the White House in this November's election is extremely close, right? It's a very close election, as most of them are over the last couple of cycles. So how does your approach change whether Biden or Trump is in the White House, whether you are in the majority or in the minority?
David, my first act as the sitting mayor of Hoboken was to sign an executive order declaring Hoboken a fair and welcoming community for all. And that was directly back in 2018, a response to the attacks by Donald Trump, the assaults by Donald Trump on our country's freedoms, on our citizens' freedoms, to say that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what your immigration status, you have equal rights under the law. And we'll have to make sure that we beat back against Trump if he is elected. If we have President Biden, we'll be in a better place, especially if we can gain control of the House. We'll be able to move the country forward. And in me, you have a mayor who knows how to get things done. I think Congress can use more mayors in office or people who've had experience as a mayor, because we have to actually look to local challenges, not discuss theories and academics, but real life solutions and find problems to those challenges. Washington needs more mayors. I'm one of them.
Okay, Congressman Menendez, you have a minute to respond.
Sure. So thank you for that question. And as you know, right now, Democrats are in the minority in the House. And in our short time in office, we've already proven that we know how to deliver no matter what the circumstances are. We brought back $11 billion for our critical infrastructure. We've solved over 1,500 cases. We've been productive, even though we've been in the minority. But let me tell you how we would take our experience if Trump were to be elected. One is we stand up to MAGA extremists every single day when we're in Washington. We have the privilege of sitting on the Committee of Homeland Security. We stood up to H.R. 2, which was their inhumane border bill that would have led to the deaths of individuals on American soil. When that came through our committee, we stood up every single opportunity that we had. When they tried to impeach Secretary Mayorkas, a sham impeachment, we stood up against MAGA extremists. We have a track record of standing up to Donald Trump acolytes in Washington, and that's the experience that we will bring back when we are reelected.
Okay, our next question comes from Joey Fox, and it goes to Mr. Menendez.
So thanks to the federal courts, this year will be the first year in a long, long time in New Jersey where the Democratic primary ballots will be organized by office rather than by party endorsement. This has obviously been a huge moment, a huge point of discussion in New Jersey politics this year. Congressman, do you think that the federal judge made the right call in striking down the county line?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've been consistent on this issue, which is that the voters of the 8th Congressional District will decide who their representatives will be, no matter what the ballot construct is. I'm excited about this new phase that we're in. I'm excited that we have this opportunity to show that the support that we had in 2022 is going to be replicated in 2024. Irregardless of what the ballot construct is. And I'm excited about something like that, because at the end of the day, what we're going to put forth to the residents is our track record of delivering. And every conversation that we have with people who live in the district, they're excited about the work that we're doing. They're excited that they have someone who's bringing this youthful energy to Washington to fight for them, to fight for our values. And ultimately, that's going to lead to electoral success. That's what we're going to prove on June 4th. And I couldn't be any more excited about that.
Okay, Mr. Bhalla, you have 1 minute to respond.
People also often ask, what's the difference between me and Congressman Menendez? This is exactly one of them. He had a chance to answer that question, and he avoided answering the question. I was out there on the front lines in the court litigation to abolish the line because it was unconstitutional according to a federal judge, and we all know it's inherently undemocratic. Where was Rob Menendez? He was silent, and he's still silent. I filed an amicus brief in the appellate division to fight to abolish the line. That prevailed because the appellate court said they had a high likelihood of success on the merits. Where was Rob Menendez? He was silent. The reason why he's silent is because he's a part of the party machine that we were trying to reform and make more democratic. I answer to the people of the 8th District. He answers to the party bosses. That's a fundamental difference that I think voters need to take into account when they consider who to cast their ballot on June 4th.
Mr. Menendez, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond to that.
I appreciate I may need more than 30 seconds because I have to read back a quote from Ravi Bhalla. He said in a Business Insider article, once the idea of abolishing the line wasn't just a pie in the sky idea, I stood up and spoke out. That's not leadership. That's not saying you've been on the right side of this issue your entire career, because you know you haven't. You called every single party leader when you decided you want to run for this office, and you sought the line. That is a fact that you've admitted to in that same Business Insider article. There are true individuals who have been fighting for the abolishment of the line. There are people like Tiffany Fishner and Frank Gilmore in Jersey City. You are not one of those people who's credible on this issue, given your hypocrisy on this issue.
Mr. Bhalla, I'll give you 15 seconds to respond before we move on.
You still haven't called for the abolishment of the line, Rob, and you still haven't taken a position. The fact of the matter is that I don't care if somebody named Tiffany or anyone else called for the abolishment of the line. I did. I filed a paperwork in the appeals court, and you did not. You stayed silent because this anti-democratic system benefits you.
All right,
you pivoted once the system that you benefited of. John Allen is in the assembly because you booted Annette Chaparro because of this bossism that you benefited of, that you used for the benefit of someone like your former chief of staff and good friend, John Allen. You are a hypocrite on this issue. Instead of trying to take credit for it, you should acknowledge that you saw the line from all those party leaders that now you are casting in a negative light. That would be more honest, but I don't think the people of the 8th Congressional District can expect honesty from you on this issue.
Mayor Bhalla, I'll give you a final 10 seconds on this before we move on, but go ahead, Mayor.
You still haven't answered the question. Where were you when the court litigation was live and it was time to take a stand? You were silent. I spoke out.
Okay, we're going to continue on with our panel discussion. David Wildstein, you have the next question, and that goes to Mayor Bhalla.
Mayor, Mr. Menendez has made your own ethics an issue in this campaign. He's criticized you for being censured by the New Jersey Supreme Court for unethical behavior as an attorney and the loss of your law license in New York. What happened that got you in trouble, and how can voters be certain that you won't miss an ethical line in the future if you're serving as their congressman?
Thank you, David. Yes, the congressman is trying to make what amounts to a payroll dispute 16 years ago that was resolved amicably into something that has nothing to do with my track record as mayor. That was resolved. I take obviously ownership of mistakes that were related to administrative errors 16 years ago. But what that doesn't show is my lifelong track record as a professional in the area of civil rights law, where I've gained national recognition. It doesn't take into account the fact that I served as the tenant advocate attorney for the city of Union City, fighting against wrongful evictions of people and slumlord conditions of tenants. It doesn't take into account these accomplishments that I've earned as an attorney. And what really also concerns me is that the congressman is talking about paperwork errors 16 years ago, and he's concerned about that, but he's not concerned about the fact that his father's being accused of being a foreign agent for the Egyptian government. He's not concerned about the fact that he's risking the balance of the Senate by failing to endorse Andy Kim when reproductive rights are at issue. These are concerning things that the congressman is fundamentally conflicted on. And when we talk about his father, it shows that he is conflicted because he won't take a stance on these fundamental issues.
Congressman, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, first of all, since Ravi's mentioned this twice, there are 3 candidates running for United States Senate. I don't know. I mean, Andy's the front runner, but there are 3 people running. So saying that I haven't endorsed any candidate is sort of off the point. Second of all, listen, I encourage every resident of the 8th Congressional District. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to Ravi's spin on it. Just Google it. Just read the decisions yourself and what both the disciplinary courts in New York and New Jersey said about Ravi's behavior. That's not me saying and trying to create an issue where there's none. I'm actually just pulling from legal documents that describe Ravi's unethical behavior. That's all I'm doing. And I'm just highlighting it for the residents of the 8th Congressional District. You may not believe me. You may not be sure about Ravi's answer. Just go read for it yourself and ask yourself if that's someone that you want to put in a position where they have to go advocate for you, fight for you every single day, or whether you trust someone who's actually done the work, who actually has delivered for you. That's a question that people need to answer, but they should just go look at the opinions themselves because there's no spin on my end about it.
Mayor, would you like 30 seconds to respond?
Yeah, I think the record speaks for itself. I have over 16 years of public service where Hoboken was at junk bond status rating when I first came into office. We're AA plus. We have gained national recognition on having safe streets, not a single traffic fatality in 7 years. We are not even a national, we're an international leader on climate action. I have delegations from Japan, England, Australia, Israel, you name it, coming to Hoboken to see what we're doing to fight climate change. And we are also ranked as one of the best cities to live in the country. So these are earned accomplishments that matter, not payroll errors that were made 16 years ago. You could keep on talking and distracting the voters about that, but we should be talking about the issues that matter in this race and our accomplishments on the record.
Okay, Micah Rasmussen,
I
you have
can't
the
wait to
next
talk
question.
about my accomplishments as the sitting member of the House of Representatives.
Congressman, the super rich control more of America's wealth than they did during the robber baron era. What does economic policy need to look like? And specifically, would you support a billionaire's tax with a higher effective rate than the working class?
So listen, we need our economy to work for working families. Those are the folks who drive our economy, who we rely on in every segment of our economy. And we see it in childcare, we see it in housing, we see it across every single sector. We need an economy that works more for working families, more for middle class families. That's why our first bill that we introduced was the Working Families Task Force Act, to bring a whole of government approach to figure out the challenges that working families are facing right now in this moment. That was our first bill. Every single day, we're thinking about the challenges that families are facing, the affordability challenges that folks are facing. That's why we co-sponsored the most significant piece of housing legislation that Maxine Waters introduced. We are thinking about solutions for every single working family, but absolutely part of Congress's obligation is to think about how we do two things: how we raise revenue and how we appropriate spend money. And so, how we raise revenue, we need to think about the wealthiest 1% and the obligations that they have to pay more into our reserve so we can benefit and uplift working families. Absolutely something that I would consider.
Mayor, you have 1 minute to respond as well.
That's the exact problem about Congress. They keep on thinking about what they're doing and thinking about what they're doing and thinking about what they're doing and thinking about what they're doing. As a mayor, I've actually got to get stuff done, and we've gotten stuff done. You talk about affordability. We've gone after corporate landlords who raise rents in unconscionable ways, 20%, 30% in 1 year. We've put those landlords under rent control where appropriate. When there's an unconscionable increase, I've taken these landlords to federal court to stop and protect tenants. So affordability, yes, is an issue, whether it's healthcare, whether it's housing, whether it's a living wage. And as a mayor, I've had to deal with these challenges head on and find real solutions while Congress keeps on talking about these bills and talking about what they want to do. We need more mayors in Washington because we know how to get things done.
Okay, our next question is coming from Joey, and it's going to Mayor Bhalla.
So I'll be very blunt with this question. Mayor, if you win this majority Hispanic district, it will probably mean that New Jersey will be without a Hispanic member of Congress for the first time since the 1990s. How will you go about making sure that that oftentimes underrepresented community will still feel engaged and represented in the democratic process?
Thank you. I'm already starting that process. Representation matters. As a mayor, I have elevated Latino and Hispanic employees to executive and departmental level positions. Our DPW director is a Latino woman. Our director of climate action and innovation is a Latino woman. Our city engineer is a Latino woman. And our director of recreation is Latina. So I have done real things to elevate the Latino community within my administration. And within the district, I agree, they are a marginalized minority that deserves to be uplifted. I don't make distinctions between people who are on the sidelines, whether they are Latino, Asian, African American, or myself, who would be the first Sikh American in the US Congress in United States history. I think that also counts for something. Representation does matter. It matters to me. It matters to my community. And I also consider the Latino community a part of my community because it's, at the end of the day, one community we live in the 8th Congressional District.
Congressman Menendez, over to you.
Oh, one, there's no longer a Latina in the assembly representing this area because of Ravi's decision and his bossism. Two, I think he said that Latinos are on the sidelines. That's not the way I view this district. Latinos, everyone that lives in the 8th Congressional District, is the core of who we are and the core of what we have to represent in Washington. I'm proud to be part of the largest class of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. I'm proud to serve there in a leadership role as co-chair of our immigration task force. But these are the stories that I take with me. My grandparents immigrated here from Cuba and planted their American roots. So many people start their American story here. That's why I love representing this district with every fiber of my being. I love taking these stories with me to Washington and having them center me in every single thing that we do. This is what America looks like. This is who we can be if we foster inclusive communities, which is what we've done here in the 8th Congressional District. I bring those stories. I bring that success with me to Washington. And that's why I love this fight and love getting to represent this incredible district.
Okay, Micah, did you have a follow-up, or are we going to go ahead with the student's question?
Well, it would be great if we could hear whether or not both candidates are going to raise a tax on billionaires.
So, Mr. Ravi, we go to you first.
Sure. To the extent that we need to fund certain things, such as Medicare for All, which I support and my opponent does not, we need to make sure that we stop this trend of the rich getting richer and the middle class and working families being left behind. So any tax on the wealthiest of the wealthy to support social programs for the underserved and underrepresented, such as Micah, a billionaire's tax, is fair game and certainly something I would support.
Okay, and over to Mr. Menendez.
Yeah, I think, unlike Ravi, I think I answered it the first time. But absolutely something that we would consider. And the work that we've done has been about uplifting working middle-class families. You know, Ravi said that people in Washington think. There's also the reality of the fact that we're in the minority. So the idea that we're going to pass a billionaire's tax this Congress is something that's just not a reality. So we focus on what we can get done. And that's exactly what we've done in our time in office, bringing resources back to the 8th Congressional District, doing things like bringing environmental justice grants to the city of Elizabeth. We've done some incredible work in the minority, but you have to be realistic about the situation that we're in. When we take back the House, we should absolutely have that conversation of a billionaire's tax so we continue to fund the programs that benefit our working and middle class families.
Okay, we have a question now from a student at Rider University that we are going to roll, and that will go first to Rob Menendez.
My question is, who should determine where the line is between the First Amendment right to freedom of speech and protest? Judges or college and university administration? Thank you.
Congressman, to you first.
Yeah, so I appreciate that timely question. Obviously, we're seeing what's going on around college campuses. We have to protect the First Amendment, obviously. We have to ensure that we're fostering environments on campus where people feel like they can exercise their First Amendment right, have these difficult conversations, and we are having so many of them right now. But we also need to make sure that we're creating safe environments for all of our students. It's been a challenge for a lot of campuses. There are other universities and colleges that have had success on this issue. I think first, we need to make sure that we're protecting all of our students while we simultaneously protect their First Amendment rights. I believe that is the obligation of an administration, a college or university administration, to create that environment. And I think that's critically important to make sure that they're doing that across the country.
Okay, Mayor Bhalla, over to you.
It's not the place of a judge or a member of Congress to stick their nose into the business of a university. It's on the university leadership to make sure that universities are safe spaces for all, where people have the right to protest, where people have the right to exercise their First Amendment's right to free speech, and where people have the right not to be harassed and subjected to anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. University should be a safe space. There are rules and regulations governing the conduct of individuals on campuses, and it's on the administrators, the leadership of those universities, to make sure that those rules are followed consistent with our rights as American citizens.
Okay, we're going to go back to our panel and bring up David Wildstein, who has a question for Mayor Bhalla.
Mayor, does Israel have the right to defend itself? And does the United States have an obligation to defend Israel as it would do for any of our allies that are under attack, whether by another nation or by a terrorist group? And the third part of this question is how should the vast humanitarian needs in Gaza and for the hostages be met?
Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. America should support Israel and its right to defend itself. And there needs to be unfettered access of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. We're in a situation now where after October 7th, nothing like that had happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. That was something that will never and should never be forgotten and should never happen again. At the same time, we need to encourage our friends in Israel to exercise restraint in their response to those attacks. And we have to be aware of the fact that those responses at times have been inconsistent with our values as Americans. And we need to also speak out about that. I support a negotiated, brokered ceasefire that includes the release of all hostages and the unfettered access of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. And I think that we need to move forward into a phase where we can realize a two-state solution that recognizes Israel's pre-existing right to exist, as well as the right of an independent Palestinian state with equal footing as Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt.
Congressman, over to you.
Yes, Israel has a right to defend itself. Yes, Israel is an ally of the United States. They are one of our most important strategic partners, and that's why I was proud to vote for the aid package that supported our ally while also surging humanitarian aid to so many regions that are in need of that aid, including Gaza. So this is an issue that is critically important, but we have to continue to navigate it, continue to move forward, because the reality is no one wants to see what's happening today occur for one day longer. That's the reality. We need to continue to work with all of our allies, all of our partners, try to move out of the phase that we're in so we can start rebuilding to a future that looks much different than what we're seeing today. When Netanyahu said that a two-state solution wasn't a viable option, we spoke out against that, and we will continue to. We need to build the foundation from which we can develop an idea of what a long-term peaceful solution that's durable and resilient looks like. That's incumbent upon all of us, and we are committed to that work.
Okay, Micah Rasmussen, you have a question next, and it goes to Congressman Menendez.
Closely related, what is your view on what the criteria should be for when the United States should give federal aid or withhold it? I'm sorry, foreign aid. I apologize.
So I think we live in an extremely complicated world right now. When I announced I was running for Congress in 2022, only a short couple of months thereafter, Russia invaded Ukraine. We have China posturing in the Red Sea. We have an aggressive Iran that's using proxies across the globe to attack our allies. So I think first, we need to make sure that we're supporting our allies, make sure that we're standing strong and sending a clear vision and message that we will not abandon our allies and that we are in this with them to ensure that we have a safer future for all of our global citizens, to ensure that we're beating back authoritarian regimes, to make sure that we're uplifting democratic values across the globe. These are complicated times. These are difficult conversations, but we do have an obligation to be clear to our allies that we are here. We will stand strong with them. We will not back down to someone like Vladimir Putin, and we will keep fighting alongside them to ensure that we get to better tomorrows where we have a more democratic future for more citizens across the globe.
Mayor, your turn.
Micah, that's a great question. And the short answer is that we need to have a more surgical approach when determining whether or not to appropriate foreign aid to any country, including and especially our most friendly countries. We should do so in a way that's consistent with our values as Americans. We should do so in a way that does not undermine critical values such as the protection of human rights, the rule of international law, and we should not provide foreign aid to governments where we see a human rights record that is not consistent with our values as Americans. So we need to look closely at every situation where we provide assistance to a foreign government and make sure that that assistance is being used to advance American values, not set them back.
Okay, Joey Fox, you were next, and that question goes to the mayor first.
In other big bills that Congress has passed recently, last month, both the House and Senate reauthorized a program that allows the government to warrantlessly surveil non-citizens, and it also shot down a proposed amendment that would have prohibited any warrantless surveillance of Americans. So my question is, how would you have voted on both of those votes? First, the reauthorization bill and on the amendment?
Warrantless searches of Americans, needless to say, by definition, violate the rights of people under the Fourth Amendment, right to privacy. So we just need to make sure that any legislation that's passed actually speaks to the rights of individuals not to be subjected to warrantless searches and seizures in any context. So any reauthorization of a bill that would advance the right to conduct a warrantless search should not be supported, and any legislation that advanced the checks on warrantless searches to make sure that they don't occur should be supported.
Congressman, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, and thanks. And this is one of the issues that we took a deep dive in when we were in Washington and having this conversation between the Intel and Judiciary committees, and a lot of really thoughtful conversations amongst the caucus about the best pathway forward. And our approach was to listen to both sides, to listen to Intel's view of the pathway forward, listen to Judiciary's view of the pathway forward, but ultimately relying on the Intel community's guidance on this issue, because representing a district that was so deeply impacted by 9/11, we cannot have a security failure. We have an obligation to keep our residents safe every single day. And as we consider any piece of legislation, we will always consider what the experts say, and especially when it comes to how we safely protect all of our residents.
Okay, it's time now in our debate where we're going to let our candidates ask each other a question of their opponent. So first question will go to Mr. Bhalla. For Rob Menendez, you've got 30 seconds to ask your question, answer for 60 seconds, and then a response for 30 seconds. So again, Mr. Bhalla, your question to Mr. Menendez.
But that's my question.
Okay, correct. That is your question. Correct, Mayor.
Okay. Congressman Menendez, in light of the 4 indictments that have now been handed down against your father and the mountain of evidence against him, will you return the $20,000 in contributions your father's leadership PAC has given to your campaign? Yes or no?
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the beginning, in my opening, we knew that ultimately you would want to keep interjecting my father into this. And it's unfortunate because we're really here to talk about our track record of delivering for the 8th Congressional District and talking about the broad coalition of support that we have. But I haven't given any consideration to what I'm going to do with any particular contribution, whether from my father or anybody else.
Mr. Bhalla, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I just find it very shocking that you haven't even considered, even right now when I'm asking you the question, whether or not you would return contributions from your father who's under indictment, or any contributions for that matter. The fact that my contributions come from individuals, whereas your contributions come from corporate PACs, lobbyists, and special interests, it's not surprising when you look at the votes you've taken in Congress and you see that you're controlled by other people, by lobbyists, whereas I'm going to be answerable to the people of the 8th Congressional District.
Mr. Menendez, before
Well,
you
I
ask
just
your
have, I just have
question,
to quick.
yes,
I have to,
go ahead.
Yeah, I have to quickly say, I mean, if you're talking about contributions and who we're accountable to, half of your contributions come from the state of California. So it's almost like you'd be a representative out there in the San Jose area than you would for the residents of the 8th Congressional District. Second, listen, when we've solved those 1,500 cases that I alluded to earlier, those are the people who live here. Those are the people that we answer to. You look at our work and our track record, we're delivering for the residents of the 8th Congressional District. No one except you has any doubt about that. And we'll keep delivering for the residents of the 8th Congressional District.
Okay, Mr.
So I guess
Menendez,
the
you may
answer is
now.
you will not return those contributions. Thank you.
We're going to have Mr. Menendez now. You have a question for the mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to read this one. So, as you know, we've been extremely productive in delivering for our district, and specifically for Hoboken. Here are a few examples. We introduced a bill that would allow Hoboken to access funding to assist unhoused individuals. We secured almost $1 million to upgrade Hoboken's water infrastructure. We secured nearly $1 million for Stevens Institute of Technology to prepare for extreme weather events. My question is, in your opinion, which of those projects will benefit the residents of Hoboken the most?
Well, those projects in their totality are, in terms of your contributions, are respectively drops in the bucket of much larger projects that we've undertaken as a city. Talk about Union Dry Dock. Yes, you helped us with the Army Corps of Engineer, Congressman, but that's literally about 1% of a 7-year fight to protect and preserve our waterfront. And that fight was led by Mayor Bhalla. It was led by me, and we won that fight. So to say that you helped a little bit, you're a small part of that, sure, you get that credit. But please don't outsize what you can do in Congress to help the city of Hoboken. The buck stops with me as the mayor. Everything that we've done in Hoboken, whether it's help from a state legislator, a county official, a federal official, is all great. But at the end of the day, I've got to run my city on my own merit, and I've done so successfully, with your partnership. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with me, and I'm proud of my record. Thank you.
Mr. Menendez, you have 30 seconds.
Well, one, I do appreciate partnering together, and that's why I enjoyed hosting you in Washington. It was one of the first people to visit and talk about all the priorities that we had aligned. I appreciate your credit that we helped with the Union Dry Dock. It is a critically important issue to Hoboken. That's why we jumped in and did whatever we could with the Army Corps of Engineer. But I didn't even reference that project in my question. My question was related to 3 other projects that we've assisted with. And I was just wondering, in your opinion, which one would benefit the residents of Hoboken the most? I thought it was actually a pretty benign question, especially compared to the one that you asked. But if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. I think a lot of the work that we do benefits the residents of Hoboken. And we're proud about that work and proud to continue doing it because we really love all of our residents and all of the municipalities in the 8th Congressional District.
Okay, we're going to go back now to our panel. David Wildstein has the next question, and that one goes to Mr. Menendez.
Thank you. Congressman, New Jersey's 8th District has a large Cuban population, but now not just first generation, second, third, fourth generation Cuban Americans. So what's the future of relations between the United States and Cuba? Do you believe the easing of restrictions between the U.S. and Cuba will foster democracy, or will they instead just fortify the current communist regime?
So we've been yearning for a free democratic Cuba. That's everyone's dream. There can be differences about how we achieve that, but you talk about anyone of Cuban descent, and that's what we all want for the island, for the residents of the island. So many of us of Cuban descent want to go back to a free democratic Cuba. We have to continue to push to do that. There are a lot of different points of view on this issue. We should listen to folks on this issue, but ultimately there is complete agreement that what we want more than anything is for the people of Cuba to finally have a free, liberated island. And that's something that I will continue to work on every single day that I have the honor of serving in the House of Representatives.
Mr. Bhalla, your response.
Unfortunately, right now, the current Cuban government is still engages in human rights violations, is not a democratic government, and the people that suffer most are the Cuban people. The U.S. policy previous years has been misdirected in a way that has furthered that suffering. So the loosening of policies to allow more interactions between Cuban Americans, other Americans, and the Cuban people is good for the Cuban people. We have to keep the Cuban people first, second, and third in the forefront of our mind in terms of the best foreign policy. Loosening restrictions, gaining more access to tourism, educational opportunities, trade is all good for the Cuban people, as well as pressuring the government to open up to a more democratic system for that country.
David, a follow-up?
Yes, quickly, just a couple seconds. Congressman, Mayor Bhalla said he supports loosening restrictions. Do you agree with him? Should restrictions be loosened on U.S.-Cuban relations?
I don't think loosening restrictions without any sort of return on the loosening restrictions is good foreign policy. I'm happy to entertain any option that people put forth, as long as in return we move forward towards a freer Cuba. That's the give and take. And in my opinion, when you saw the loosening of restrictions, you didn't get the return on the investment in terms of moving Cuba towards a freer, more democratic society. So that's the complexity. It's not just about saying no to something. It's what do you get in return, and what are you doing to advance the democracy on the island? That's the question, and that's how I would always approach it.
Mayor, give you a chance to jump in as well.
Just briefly, the loosening of restrictions, sure, it has to come with some assurances that there's going to be some benefit to the Cuban people, but in and of itself, that is a benefit. We've been stuck in a quagmire for years, and we want to get out of that. We need to move forward towards more interaction between the Cuban people and the American people, so that we can get to a stable place in the future.
Micah Rasmussen.
I would just quickly push back, because I don't think the loosening of restrictions under previous administrations has gotten us to the point where we want. To just say to do it for the sake of doing it because it may create a better outcome is not a results-oriented approach to the island. And so I would just say I differ there.
Okay, on to Micah Rasmussen, and you have a question for Mayor Bhalla.
Yes, I do. The public's access to public records, to government records, is absolutely an essential role and an important tool for citizens, and frankly for legislators who are in the minority when the other party is in the majority and has control of the government. It's an extremely important tool. It's been an extremely important tool to Democrats in the House over the years. So it also requires a strong commitment. New Jersey is right now grappling with a question about what our public records law should look like. And my understanding is Hoboken is in court right now over a case of whether or not information was provided that should have been provided. So what should our public records, what's your vision for what public records access should look like in the federal government and for any government, frankly?
The more we can expand public access to government records, the more we can have a more transparent democracy, whether it's at the state level or the federal level. I see a disturbing trend in the state of New Jersey with legislators trying to restrict access under what's called the OPRA, Open Public Records Act, and that's disturbing. I understand the counter argument about it's burdensome, but at the end of the day, these are the public's records. The public has a right to know how their government officials are communicating, how their government officials are acting, and trying to create loopholes to obfuscate and obviate their obligation is something that I would fight against, whether it's Oprah or whether it's the FOIA Act.
Mr. Menendez, your response?
Yeah, so Appreciate this question. Transparency in government is critically important, whether it's at the local, county, state, or federal level. I think first you have to make sure that we're complying with the laws as they are. I think that's something that Hoboken has been challenged with, especially in terms of a timeliness of responses and delaying Oprah requests. I think even just recently, the Hoboken BA actually Oprah'd council people's text messages on a project that the former mayor was involved in. And so I definitely don't believe that we should be weaponizing Oprah. I definitely don't think that we should be preventing people from having access to it. And we definitely should not consider any future laws or regulations that would limit people's access to government documents. I think as a starting point, though, we should make sure that we're complying with existing law.
Okay, our next question comes from Joey, and it goes to Congressman Menendez.
So, Congressman, earlier in this debate, Mayor Bhalla said that he supports Medicare for All. There's a Medicare for All bill in the House, which you have not co-sponsored. Just curious, why is that? And is this a policy you'd be open to supporting? If not, what other healthcare policies do you think that a Democratic majority in Congress should be pursuing?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for framing it that way, Joey. One is we believe in universal health care. The question is how do we achieve it? It's something that my colleague Andy Kim and I are in agreement about. We should keep all options on the table, and that's something that I would absolutely do when Democrats take back control of the House in the 119th Congress. In the interim, we have to find ways to do things like fund our federally qualified health centers, making sure that we're pushing back on Republicans' attempt to roll back the Affordable Care Act, to roll back a woman's right to reproductive access, rolling back a woman's access to contraception. We have to do all these things. We have to stand tall against the MAGA extremism and their attempts to roll back the rights that we have had, to roll back our access to health care. It's something that we've done every single day in taking office. And when we take back the majority, we'll consider any legislative option that expands health care for our residents.
Mayor, your response.
I support Medicare for all. The congressman has not indicated that he supports Medicare for all. So I can only assume that he does not support Medicare for all, full stop. We need to not only support Medicare for all, but we need to expand the universe of people who have access to Medicare for all. We need to make sure that reproductive rights, which are at stake, are included in that access to health care through Medicare for all. And we need to make sure that it's funded through things like Micah had suggested, a billionaire's tax, to make sure that we realize our vision of healthcare as a human right for all. Congressman Menendez actually voted against a measure that would have cracked down on surprise medical billing, the types of medical bills that you get when you go to the emergency room, when you go to a hospital, and all of a sudden you receive a large medical bill. There was an effort to crack down on surprise medical billing. He was one of the only few Republicans and Democrats, about 40 members of Congress, that voted against that bill. Think about that.
Congressman, I'll let you have a response.
We should think about that because that's a complete misrepresentation of the Hearn Amendment. It was a plus up, plus down to make a point. And I was standing next to Frank Pallone, who's ranking member of Energy and Commerce, when that bill came up, and he was telling me about some of the jurisdictional background on it, some of the committee work on that issue. There's no greater champion in Congress than Frank Pallone on things like surprise billing. He also voted against it, and based on the conversation that we had, I voted against it. And it being a messaging bill, not what Ravi's saying that it is. But I also don't really understand his answer about Medicare for all. He's saying he supports Medicare for all, but we have to figure out all these things as it relates to Medicare for all. So in the current form of, of how it's been introduced, are there changes that you want to make? You said we have to figure out funding. We might have to do it through a billionaire's tax. Yeah, those are all great questions. Those are the conversations that I want to have to make sure that we create a viable option for universal health care. But those questions are critically important. So that's the conversation that I want to have. As I said earlier, that would consider all options, including Medicare for all, as we look for a pathway to create universal health care in our country.
Okay, we have one final question that we have time for. David Wildstein, you have the final question, and that will go to Mayor Bhalla first, and then we will go to our closing statements.
Thank you. This all goes by so quickly. Mayor, you're running against an incumbent. So what specific vote did Congressman Menendez cast since he's been in the House where you would have voted differently?
Well, I just stated I would not have voted with Congressman Pallone, Congressman Menendez, and the 38, 40 other Republicans and Democrats to crack down on surprise medical billing. I just think that that's wrong. That this was an opportunity where only 40 members of the entire Congress voted against this amendment to a bill that would have cracked down on surprise medical billing, and they voted against it. That's just one example of a vote that I think goes to the heart of average Americans and the suffering they see in the healthcare industry when they get bills that are outsized to the procedures and the treatment of care that they've received. This goes to the heart of some of the affordability issues in the 8th Congressional District.
Congressman, your time.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, I mean, if Ravi's saying that the vote that he disagrees with the most is a messaging bill that I voted alongside Ranking Member Pallone on, that means I'm doing something right. And what I'm doing right is delivering for the residents of the 8th Congressional District. I'm making sure we put the values of this district forward and take those with me to Washington every single day. We've had to take a lot of tough votes. These are challenging times, but we always come back to what's best for the district and try to uplift the voices here and make sure that we take their stories, take their aspirations with us to Washington. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done here in the district, helping families down in Washington, trying to come up with a legislative solution. Something I didn't get to talk about was after the tragic fire at Port Newark, our team went to work and thinking about what we could do to make sure that never happens again. At that fire, 2 Newark firefighters lost their lives. We spoke about them on the House floor, but that wasn't enough. We came up with legislative solutions to make sure it never happens again. We do the work of the district, and I'm extremely proud of it.
Okay, it's time now to go to our closing statements, and we'll be starting with Mayor Bhalla. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone, including the congressman, for this engaging debate. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what democracy looks like. It's a chance for us to exchange ideas, and I'm not sure we would have gotten this chance a few years ago when we had the line, and when especially in Hudson County, we didn't have elections, but we had selections by party bosses. Ladies and gentlemen, you finally have a choice that's based upon merit, a choice that's based upon qualifications. I've been serving the residents of the city of Hoboken for about 15 years, and we've accomplished so much turning around that city to a model of success that the entire country can be proud of. I want to take that experience to Washington to benefit not just the residents of Hoboken, but the entire 8th Congressional District, and set an example not just for the district, but for the entire country. Again, we need more people in Congress who have experience at the local levels as mayors, who have to tackle tough problems and get things done to move our countries forward. I have that experience. I have a proven track record. That's what distinguishes me from my opponent. And that's why I would respectfully ask for your confidence and your vote on June 4th. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congressman, now your time.
Thank you, and thank you for moderating, and thank you to everyone who's been a part of this and giving us this opportunity. Thank you to Mayor Bhalla for engaging in this dialogue, and I hope the residents of the 8th Congressional District found it helpful. 2 years ago, I raised my hand to represent the district I love. It wasn't easy. My wife and I had one young child, and shortly after we made the decision to run, we found out we had a second one on the way. It's challenging to leave them. It's challenging to spend time in 2 different places, but this has been the greatest privilege of my life. I get to represent the place where I grew up, the place where my wife and I are raising our 2 young kids. And I love this district with every fiber of my being. And when you look at our results, I think you know that that's the case. We go to work every single day for you. We are fanatical about constituent services. I try to find anyone, whether I'm walking down the street or at an event, and tell them about the work that we can do for them. Let me say this, because this is important. I know this is about Ravi and myself, but we have an incredible team of public servants who does the work every single day. And the thing that I'm perhaps most proud of in my time in office, the short amount of time in office, is yes, the results, what we've done for the district, but the team that we've put together to work for the 8th Congressional District. Ravi and I are just, one person each, but the team that we've developed are the ones who've delivered the successes, the ones who are going to work every single day for our constituents. And I'm so proud of it. And I'm just proud that my wife also still loves me because I'm gone in Washington so often. And that when I'm home, I get to spend time with my 2 beautiful kids. And I'm just so thankful that I get to represent the place that I love so much. So thank you all for participating. And thank you for this immense, incredible opportunity.
And that concludes New Jersey Debate Night. I'd like to thank the candidates Rob Menendez and Ravi Bhalla for their time and their responses. Also, thank you to our panelists, David Wildstein, Micah Rasmussen, and Joey Fox. Thank you also to the New Jersey Globe on New Jersey and the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University for producing this debate. And thanks to C-SPAN for airing this debate. We invite you to stay tuned because immediately following the debate, we are going to have a conversation with our panelists, talk a little bit more about this debate and get their reactions and their insight. I'm Laura Jones. Remember, primary election day in New Jersey is June 4th. Head over to ONNJ.com if you'd like to see the debate again. We thank you for watching. Thank you so much for staying with us for the post-debate conversation. I'm Laura Jones, and we just heard from the Democratic candidates in New Jersey's 8th Congressional District. The incumbent is Rob Menendez, who is being challenged by Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bhalla. I'm going to bring back in our panelists for some analysts, and we only have 2 of our panelists joining us back for this post-debate discussion, and that is David Wildstein and Joey Fox from the New Jersey Globe. Guys, thanks for sticking around after the show. This is one of those races that is really very tight. It has been a very heated debate. So, David, I'll go to you first. Just what were your overall expectations going into this and some of your impressions coming out?
I'll tell you, number one impression is this debate was extraordinarily more civilized than I thought it was going to be. These 2 candidates don't like each other. You all seen their arguments back and forth on social media. This debate wasn't like this. They both acted respectfully toward each other, for which each of them gets a tremendous amount of credit. And they made it a policy debate. They didn't make it personal. And I think that is excellent for democracy.
Yeah, Joey, let me get your thoughts. You cover the congressman down in D.C. You're covering this race. What are your, again, same question, expectations, and what did you think coming out of this debate?
I mean, I think more than you oftentimes see with primary debates, you actually had a fair number of very genuine policy differences come out. And in some cases, it was the things that the two candidates sniped at each other over, like the county line and ethics-related issues, and the congressman's father, Bob Menendez. That all obviously came up. But you also saw genuine debates on Medicare for all, about whether that's the best strategy on healthcare policy, and on surveillance legislation, and these other things. I mean, most questions that we asked, sometimes in debates we'll ask questions and the two candidates will basically give the same answer, and then it'll just be like, oh, well, okay, I guess that's where they stand. But in this one, you have two pretty contrasting visions. I think that you could categorize, Rob Menendez's vision as being a little bit more results focused, a little bit more, he was heavily focusing on the specific work he's done for the district. And I think on the issues where there's sort of more of a left-right divide, Mayor Bhalla took the more progressive tack on Medicare for all, on surveillance. But just generally, these are two candidates who, depending on who wins, will genuinely have a pretty different perspective on the job.
All right, and David, can you talk a little bit to our audience just about when we were talking about this debate and getting ready, how the sensitivity about the congressman's father going to trial in a little over a week, how that, we didn't want it to dominate it, but yet we really had a responsibility to bring it up. So how did you think the congressman handled that? And also, Mr. Bhalla, how he was also positioning himself, attacking or not attacking Rob Menendez?
Look, that is the issue. That's why Congressman Menendez has a primary. If his father wasn't in legal trouble, if his father wasn't indicted and facing a trial during this primary, I think you'd probably see Rob Menendez coasting to a re-election victory. So the reality is he's got this primary because of his father. He did well in deflecting it. It's hard, and I was really curious to see how he would handle it, because he's still a son, and when you take the politics out of that, the guy still loves his father, and he can't stand up there to save himself and throw his father under the bus. But that may be what voters are looking for. Look, this is, by all accounts, potentially a close race. There's no lines. Congressman Bhalla has raised a ton of money, enough certainly to be extremely competitive in this race. And when we organized the debate, when we picked the date, we didn't know what the full trial schedule was going to be. Senator Menendez was supposed to go on trial starting tomorrow morning. That's now been extended to next Monday. But you're going to have 3 weeks of intense daily national media coverage of Bob Menendez's trial, Robert Menendez's trial, when Robert Menendez is on the ballot for re-election. So I think the congressman did as well as he could. I think Mayor Bhalla did well in throwing that punch, but not doing it in a way that would create a lot of sympathy for his opponent. This is really what this race is going to be about, I think, is will voters know which Menendez they're voting for? If they know that they're voting for a different candidate with the same name, then I think that's going to make a big difference in the race. If they don't know, if they think that it's just the same guy, or if they believe in visiting the sins of the father upon the son, then you could be looking at a different outcome.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up. When you see the name on the ballot, will it say Robert Menendez Jr. or will it say Rob Menendez?
It actually says Rob. Yeah, it says Rob Menendez.
It does say Rob Menendez. Okay, so all right, so there is a distinction. Joey, you've covered so much about the lines and how this really changed everything. So not only is Congressman Rob Menendez dealing with the accusations against his father, the lines are also thrown out the door. So can you just talk a little bit about that and how it's really shook up this race and how it really didn't. It hasn't impacted, other races. Of course, we're dealing with his son, but how it really had the potential, just this line, and how it, one of the final things that the mayor said was, I don't think we would have had this debate a couple of years ago because of the lines and people anointing candidates when it comes to these county conventions. And, you've covered that so much. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, what I'll quickly say in response to what Mayor Bhalla was saying, he got in this race before Andy Kim even filed this lawsuit, before the prospect of the line being struck down was even like in the cards. So this race in particular would have gone forward with or without the line. And in my opinion, actually, so the line tends to have the most impact in the lowest salience races, in races for things like county commissioner, where voters are going into the polling place without having a lot of education about the issues at hand or the candidates on the ballot, and will vote for the candidates who are sort of conveniently provided to them by the ballot design, by the party endorsement. I think that absolutely the line being struck down is a benefit to anyone who is off the line, no matter what office level. That seems pretty cut and dry to me. But in a race like this one, where voters are actually pretty clued into it, or if they're not yet, they will be soon, and where both candidates are going to be spending like upwards of $1 million on TV ads, on mailers, on canvassing, and outside groups are coming in support of both candidates already. You've already seen several $100,000 spent by outside groups on behalf of each candidate. I think that how a ballot design is designed is not as impactful. The more money is spent and the more voters learn about a race, because ultimately, if a voter knows beforehand, I'm voting for Rob Menendez, I'm voting for Ravi Bhalla, it's not like the ballot looking a certain way is going to stop them from doing that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about, David, and I mentioned this in the pre-show explanation when we were explaining the rules of the debate. There actually are 3 candidates, and there is a third candidate. He wasn't invited onto the show, Kyle Jacey. So can you explain a little bit about the thought process behind that and why it was the two, the congressman and the mayor, and not the third candidate?
Sure. I mean, that's always the challenge when you organize a debate, is that you want the voters to really have a choice between those that have a chance to win, and not have oxygen taken out by questions from somebody who really isn't in the race. And there's a lot of metrics that you use. You look at fundraising, you look at organization. This has always been something, and I'm doing this a long time, and it's always been something that you think about, which is, what is the definition of a candidate? If the definition of a candidate is, I stood outside a ShopRite and I got 200 signatures to get on the ballot, then I disagree. So with Mr. Jacey, who's had some supporters email me over the last few days, I think it's north of 4 now that have reached out. It's just, I wish that it were possible to have everybody on a stage, but just like every debates on the national level, you've got to have some cutoff so that voters can make a choice between the viable candidates.
Right, and then another thing that we mentioned going into this debate is any one of these topics you could have an entire hour to. And I mean, I'm just looking through my notes. We really did, we were able to cover a lot of ground. Again, the back and forth, the verbal assaults against each other, that really didn't help. I didn't have to use my bell at all. I haven't had to use it. Maybe later. But they kept it respectful, and we were able to cover a lot of ground. And they, for the most part, answered most of the questions. A few they hedged around, but they answered most of the questions. Maybe not necessarily how they would pay for certain programs, but just as we kind of close out this, I'll get your final thoughts on this, David, and then we'll go over to Joey.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, the reality is whether it's Rob Menendez or Ravi Bhalla serving in Congress for the next 2 years, you'd be likely to see a voting record that's not entirely dissimilar. There may be some issues here and there where they differ, but this is a Democratic seat, and they'd be part of a Democratic caucus where they'd be voting for leadership. So this, to me, is very much an election about personalities, and which of these candidates you feel most comfortable sending to Washington to fight for the 8th district.
And Joey, just get your final thoughts on this debate.
I mean, yeah. So I think that these are two candidates who, this is their first real time in the national spotlight for different reasons. Obviously, Congressman Menendez is a congressman, but he's a freshman congressman. He didn't face a competitive primary whatsoever in 2022 to get his seat. And I think that is actually sort of part of an issue in the race. He maybe shouldn't be punished for the sins of his father, but he got his seat. largely at the behest of his father's power. So that is an issue in this district and in this race, whether he wants it to be or not, and whether the charges really hold that out or not. But so this is his first time where he's really facing a real opponent and where people are actually interested in the 8th District of New Jersey. And then Mayor Bhalla he first got to the mayor's office in Hoboken in a really competitive race. But obviously, that's a city of 60,000 people. It's not national news necessarily, although it did make some headlines because I believe he was the first Sikh mayor, or one of the first Sikh mayors anywhere in the country. Regardless, this debate and this campaign in general is their first time really appealing to a broader audience and really under scrutiny for everything that they say. And that's a key dynamic of this race in my mind, is that these are two people who they got along before, and they were each running their own lives in their own turf without a ton of attention. And then suddenly we're all paying attention now, and we're seeing how they handle it.
Yeah, that's always the excitement of covering New Jersey politics, is what happens sometimes behind the scenes, and friends turn into foes, and then when the election is over, will people come together? Because this is a district that is heavily Democratic. So whoever wins this is the presumptive winner in the November election. But David and Joey, we're going to leave it at that. We'd like to thank you both, and also Micah Rasmussen, who was not able to join us for the post discussion, but for all of his time into the debate. Thank you both, and we thank you for joining us as well. And if you would like to see the debate again, you could head over to ONNJ.com. I'm Laura Jones. Have a good evening. Thanks so much for watching.